Good morning. Today is Wednesday, March 13th, and this is Devotions from St. Paul Evangelical Lutheran Church, Carlisle, Pennsylvania. We're going to take a passage today from John's Gospel. And in this passage, Jesus is talking to some Pharisees about testimony and what makes testimony valid. So this is from the 8th chapter of John's Gospel. Again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Then the Pharisees said to him, You are testifying on your own behalf. Your testimony is not valid. Jesus answered, Even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid, because I know where I come from, and I know where I'm going. But you have not known where I have come from or where I am going. You judge by human standards. I judge no one. Yet even if I do judge, my judgment is valid. For it is not I alone who judge, but I and the Father who sent me. In your law, it is written that the testimony of two witnesses is valid. I testify on my own behalf, and the Father who sent me testifies on my behalf. Then they said to him, Where is your Father? Jesus answered, You know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. He spoke these words while he was teaching in the treasury of the temple, but no one arrested him then, because his hour had not come. Jesus is having this discussion with the Pharisees immediately after he was sought by the Pharisees who caught a woman in adultery and asked, Should we stone her? And he had his famous line, He who is without sin cast the first stone. And it's important that after they all left, we remember his last line in that, Where are they who judge you? Then neither do I judge you as well. Go and sin no more. And then this discussion about testimony and judgment. The Jewish law says, just like Jesus quoted to them, that the testimony of two people makes something valid. But the Pharisees could not see the Father and did not want to accept the testimony of Jesus. Now, the Pharisees had their own reasons for not wanting to accept that testimony, because it was contrary to the way that they interpreted the laws, and it would have put them out of power, which they did not want. So what does Jesus' testimony say to us today? We see the Father just about as well as the Pharisees do. Now, we accept the Father because we have what the Pharisees didn't at that point, and we have the crucifixion and the resurrection, which we are about to celebrate at the end of this Lenten season. But we have the same issue. What does the testimony of Jesus say to us? Do we understand it as valid? Do we follow it? Do we think that what he said is what we should do? And I think for the most part we think that, but we are human just like the Pharisees and don't always live that. But I think there's one more thing. What about our testimony, your testimony and my testimony? You know, there's an awful lot of people who've never heard or read the testimony of Jesus. And somebody needs to tell them about Jesus and about what he did and about what he said and about what he stood for. I suspect most people are not going to listen to the testimony of one person, much like was valid in the Jewish law. But if lots of people are saying the same thing or acting out the same thing and following Jesus' directions, following his path, following his example for us, then that can be powerful for somebody who is just learning about Jesus. So Jesus has his own testimony and can be valid in his own right because he and the Father are one and they meet the qualifications of the Jewish law. And you and I can't beat that qualification. But together, we can be witnesses for Jesus. We can give testimony, and that testimony would be valid. Now, Jesus also talked about judgment. And while he did not judge the adulteress and said he does not judge, that's an example to us. We also should not judge. It's important that we can learn from Jesus and what he says. And I think this passage from the 8th chapter of John's Gospel tells us that we need to be active participants in this faith life with Jesus and witness for him and testify for him and try to pass on the things that he brought to this earth to share with us so that not only we but everyone can know of his life and his saving grace for you and for me. Again, the 8th chapter of John. Please read it. Thank you.